Sky Squad, we are back in the building, and of course, we've got to talk about the interview that is breaking the internet. Oh, yes, that is Carlos King's interview with the Ramona singer from the Real Housewives of New York. And baby, she is spilling all types of tea, in particular about Eboni K. Williams and the allegations that apparently Ramona was allegedly a racist. Okay, so we're going to get into all of the juicy details, but make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell button. And now let's go ahead and get into the tea. So, of course, Carlos King did this interview, and man, it is making the waves across the interwebs. Let's get into it. So right off the bat, Ramona talks about how she was disappointed how the show ended. She thinks it ended because Bravo was afraid of the backlash that it was receiving from season 13 of the Real Housewives of New York City. This was the season where Eboni K. Williams joined, and the ratings were not so good for this particular season. Now, of course, reality TV ratings have been kind of on the decline for quite some time now, but for New York, this was particularly bad because ultimately we never even got a reunion after the allegations of some sort of problematic behavior went to HR at Bravo. And these were allegedly made by Eboni K. Williams. And for Ramona, she says she it's all hurtful for her because she really felt like she bonded with Eboni immediately. Now, Carlos does admit that when he actually stopped watching season 13 in the middle of the season, and he felt like it was becoming a show where he was constantly being fed with educational pieces. I too actually stopped watching midway through the season because it just didn't feel like the New York that I was used to. And New York used to be one of my favorite franchises. So it already felt off to me, but the previous season felt off to me as well. But to be quite honest with you, I attributed that initially to the inclusion of Leah, who felt more like she belonged on Summer House or Winter House than on Real Housewives of New York City. But I digress. Anyway, Carlos said that he felt like the show lost its magic because it's supposed to be about the fun and wacky nature of, the ladies who are living their lives in New York City. And he said that Eboni said that she felt a responsibility to bring up issues based on where we are in the world. And she felt like she was casted based on that. Now, Ramona said that she initially tested with Bershawn Shaw. Now, I personally know Bershawn Shaw, and I think that Bershawn Shaw is a perfect fit for the Real Housewives of New York City as it was. Now, Ramona says that Eboni actually tested with Luann, and that allegedly, per Luann, Eboni was a completely different person in casting. Well, I'm assuming this is per Luann because Ramona does say that she has, conversations with the executives and with Andy as well. So she could have also gotten it from production. But anyway, Ramona sort of assumes that maybe because Eboni was engaged to a wealthy Jewish man and then things fell apart during the show, and maybe she needed to focus on, quote, her struggle, her race, and all of that. And Ramona says that she didn't really feel like Eboni knew how to just be on camera and the rest of the cast were on pins and needles. But she feels like Eboni felt like she needed to take a stand, and that's where the viewership started to go downhill. So according to Ramona, Eboni brought up a lot of great viewpoints, but it would have been better on a show like The View. And it felt like Eboni was more of a teacher than a castmate, and she was just frankly bored. She says she felt like the show was going downhill when they went to Salem for one of their cast trips, and they were really bonding, and then suddenly the talk turned to politics. So she ended up going to the bathroom and made a phone call to the head of the production company. Her name was Lisa, allegedly, the head of Shed Media, and said, "Hey, girl, it's happening again. And viewers don't want to hear all of this talk about politics. That's not what this show is about." And so she asked, "Can you tell production to tell Eboni to switch topics?" And so apparently, allegedly, I should say, Ramona was told, "No, we can't do that. You figure it out." And so she walks out and tries to change the mood and talk about turtle time, because y'all know that's Ramona's thing. And so then they all turned on her and they're like, oh, you can't talk politics and you can't be serious for a second. And that's when she knew it wasn't going to be a great season. Now, according to Ramona, Eboni continuously brought up politics during the show. And then Carlos kind of went back into the vault, because if you're a Real Housewives of New York fan, you know, okay? About Carol Radziwill also bringing up politics a few seasons before, and the viewers kind of went in on the cast for all of the political talk. Now, if you are also familiar with this show, you know that Ramona has always liked to stay away from politics, although you can tell that Ramona probably leans more towards the conservative side. Whatever. Anyway, this is one of the reasons why Ramona was adamant about not talking about politics, because she knows viewers want to see them have fun. She says that she was disappointed because everybody bonded on the last episode, but barely anybody saw it because the momentum of the show was lost at that point. Okay? So then we get to the Black Shabbat dinner, and I think honestly this was probably my last episode. We do not actually talk about Ramona's behavior at the dinner, but she does say that she wondered why it was called a Black Shabbat dinner, because typically it is just known as a Shabbat dinner, and she wondered why everything had to be always taken back to race. And it's so interesting to me because I feel like that conversation actually began at the network level when it was announced that Eboni would be the first Black castmate of the Real Housewives of New York City, similar to what they did with Garcelle as well. And I just kind of felt like, I mean, we know she Black, so I mean, it ain't even got to be that. And in particular for me, I'm just tired of all these firsts that we have to keep making. We need to just keep getting more people in the building, okay? More diversity in the building, and just let that be that. Because otherwise, I almost feel like it creates a sense of pressure for the Black person that's going in. Like, oh my God, like they got a Black person. Ooh, what are we gonna do? You know what I mean? So I feel like, yes, it is to be celebrated. But, you know, at the end of the day, I feel like, no, you ain't got to put that much pressure on this Black person. Let this person go into the mix and get to know the people. And it would take less stress off of the one Black person if you brought in 2 or 3 more. Okay. Anyway, that's just my own personal thing, but I'm digressing. Anyway, Ramona says there's nothing wrong with her being proud of her race, but she felt like it was being pushed down their throats. So it was asked if Eboni was responsible for the show not being renewed in its origin state and being split into 2 separate cities. Like there's the new cast that's been announced, and then there is the legacy cast. And so Ramona says no, she blames Bravo for that decision, and she thinks it's ridiculous. So apparently she was in Aspen skiing, because that's what she does, when things sort of went down, and as she understood it at the time, they were just waiting for some of the drama to die down after their season had ended. So they were supposed to start filming again in that September, and everyone was going to be renewed until Eboni made accusations about her, allegedly. So everybody was supposed to be coming back until these allegations were made. So according to Ramona, Eboni allegedly went to HR, and she says it was hurtful because these accusations were found to not be true. And apparently these allegations were that she was problematic. You know what I mean? So she says she's not a racist, and the press picked this up and had a field day with it. She even went to a lawyer to see if she could sue the Post because of the news that they were posting about her. And so because of all of this, they didn't do a reunion, even though people were saying in the media that Ramona didn't want to do it because she didn't want to face Eboni. She says that was not true. She says that's her job and she does what she needs to do. And then she says Andy told her himself they normally don't start, doing the new season until the reunion has aired, and they were gonna actually tape a reunion. And then all of a sudden it went to pieces. Okay. Everybody was supposed to be coming back. And she also goes on to say that all of the allegations against her were found to be untrue, and everything was made up fabrications, which is even more hurtful. Oh, but there's more. Carlos then asked her if Eboni was blackballed from the cast, because when he interviewed her, he says that she said that she wouldn't use the word blackballed, but it did feel like she was distant from the cast. And so he asked, was this investigation the reason why you guys were distant towards her? Ramona says, well, if you see the last episode, we came together as a team and as a cast. But Eboni likes to write things in the press. This is Ramona saying this. And the PR team couldn't control her. And she would give interviews she shouldn't have given and saying things that weren't true. She's basically saying that Eboni's a liar. Okay. So Ramona says that she called her on it because when Eboni allegedly said that they dehumanized her because they didn't give her grandmother's passing the same energy that they gave Leah's grandmother's passing because both of their grandmothers passed during the season. Ramona says it was because Leah was constantly talking about it, so they knew more about it, and they didn't know Eboni as well, and so they weren't trying to be so intrusive, and they were actually trying to be polite. But then she says Eboni turned around and made them all look bad. And when she spoke to Eboni, she said she made her promise her that, listen, if you have issues with me, just call me in the future. And she said that Eboni said, well, when I watch the show and I see certain things, I get upset. Ramona said to her, this is what she said. She says, I told Eboni to just pick up the phone. Now, allegedly, Ramona called Eboni recently, and she says she didn't understand why Eboni called her a racist. And allegedly, Ramona says that it's because Eboni says that Dave Quinn from People magazine called her and said A, B, C, and D. Now, if you guys don't know who Dave Quinn is a very popular media writer. I think he even wrote the Housewives books. It was either him or I cannot remember which person. I think it was him that wrote All Diamonds and Rose. You can get that on Amazon. Anyway, Ramona says she knew Dave never said any of those things. Plus, she knew other things from head people at Bravo who said they did not know where Eboni was getting these things from and that she's making these things up and that they were things that were never said. Ramona also went on to say she was found wrong on a lot of counts in her accusations and things that maybe she thought were true in her mind, or maybe it was hearsay. And she said that, these things simply aren't true. So then she says this. After her legal team called her about the allegations that Eboni made, she was, in a rented house in Aspen because, again, that's what she does. She says the legal team called her, asked her these questions about, the problematic accusations. And Ramona says, oh, my God, this is so crazy because just the other week ago, Eboni sent me a video praising me, talking about, oh my God, my mom loves you. I love that dress you wore. I love you, all of these things. And this was after the allegations were made. So she says that the network was shocked and was like, why would you put these accusations out there to HR, but then go on to be sending videos, being complimentary and all this? Again, this is Ramona's words. Okay. So anyway, Ramona claims that all of these claims against her cost her loads of money. She missed out on 6 figures for the reunion, okay, and 7 figures for a new season. So we at least know some of these housewives making a pretty penny for these reunions, all right, and 7 figures for a new season. Woo, that's a lot of moolah. Anyway, apparently all the cast feels the same way. And they really actually like Eboni. Apparently, Luann met with Eboni and they're okay right now. Leah always cared about, Eboni, according to Ramona, and they were all stunned and shocked by how things went down. Now, Ramona says she's not sure she wants to go back to Real Housewives of New York for the Legacy show. She says it's kind of like the Loser show because these were all people that the network didn't want to renew. So apparently she's in such a good place in her life. She's calmer. She can live in her little bubble because she don't really like being recognized and all that kind of stuff like that. She could travel with her little girlfriends and she does not, feel like she's in the press a whole lot. Which, girl, you're going to be in the press now. Anyway, so she's not sure she wants to go back into the reality TV world, but if she were a producer, she says that she would have brought Dorinda back, but she'd bring her back as a friend to test her for a couple of weeks and see if she'd gotten any less bitter, and then bring her back full time if she had learned how to behave. Regarding Teresa's wedding, you know, the one that she had posted on Instagram, that invitation, she ended up not going to Teresa's wedding because it was going to be a media circus and she did not want to be filmed at the wedding. She says she doesn't think that Teresa came out of pocket for any changes made because she believes Bravo paid for the wedding. She is dating someone she really likes who lives in New York City, and she doesn't want to talk about it, and it's really, really nice. And she feels like the network is kind of condescending towards women in some ways, but she's really thankful for all of the opportunities that it has provided her. I said, well, Lord have mercy. That was quite an interview. Now, again, we have to note that these are the words of Ramona Singer, okay? And so, to be fair and honest, I'm hoping that at some point in time, we get to hear from Eboni K. Williams, who also has a new show out, and her podcast has been renewed for a new season, so we can hear her and Dustin on the airwaves, okay? And I know a lot of y'all like Dustin and that deep voice of his, so y'all definitely need to be tuned in and tapped in and turned on to that podcast because they be talking that real stuff, okay? So I'll be interested to see what she has to say about all of this. But yet again, another dope podcast from Carlos King, and man, was this explosive. Let me know what you guys think about this conversation in the chat down below. I would be very interested. You know what it is? I get excited when I hear about the behind the scenes shenanigans that go on at networks and things like that. So forgive me if I'm a little bit excited as I'm talking about this because it's very interesting to me. Yeah, with that being said, I'm gonna catch y'all in the next video.